Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show. It is October, happy October. It's the month of Halloween, which means it's the October-thon. It means we're orange, it means we are doing lots of extra episodes.
Yeah.
Tim, sound excited. Sound excited. Say something exciting.
Woohoo.
This is what I have to work with, folks. This is what I have to work with. And then he's got like a motor rally outside his window, like the whole thing.
Yeah. Everyone heard we're doing the podcast, so they're racing to their computers to
apparently, yeah.
patiently wait for it to upload.
So obviously this is movie number 5 of the October-thon, and this is kind of an interesting one because this is a new release, and B, this is one of the movies that we've been working our way through all the previous entries on in time for it coming out, because we wanted to have done the whole series by the time we got here. So over the past like 4 or 5 months, we have reviewed every single Chucky movie: Child's Play 1, 2, 3, Bride, Seed, and Curse. All of those. This is the brand new, just released, and 7th Chucky movie. This is Cult of Chucky, which we will start spoiler free, because of course it's a new film, and we'll give you warnings halfway through before we get to spoilers. And yeah, so we're going to do that. So, Cult of Chucky. What is Cult of Chucky? Cult of Chucky follows... I mean, there's some male spoilers for the previous film, because I have to kind of say where characters are after that one, so obviously warning for that. But so we follow Nika, who from the previous film has been, you know, everyone thinks she's the one who killed everyone because no one believes her that it was a killer doll, because obviously. And she has been in a mental asylum for the past 4 years. But she's getting a little bit better. She's kind of accepted that it was all delusion, so she gets moved to this slightly, you know, less security facility. You know, still a mental asylum or a mental hospital, but it's not quite as strict as the previous one.
It's a medium security.
We get introduced to like a bunch of other people who are patients at this hospital. Obviously, the psychiatrist is the main character, but of course, the Chucky doll shows up, and chaos may or may not ensue. And
havoc is wreaked.
Yes, that is basically it. And it goes in all sorts of places that I don't think you necessarily would have seen coming before you watched the movie, which is why, you know, spoilers will be heavily sealed until we have passed into the spoiler crypt. I've not said that in a long time. I used to say that all the time when we were getting spoilers. But so yeah, so that's the movie. So Tim, I will ask the question. Now, this is the first one that we've not seen before. You know, it's a brand new Chucky movie.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking the question. I do this every episode,
you know,
Tim. Every episode.
Okay. Yeah. I know. Yeah, I was really happy to be watching, you know, not only, you know, new horror movie that I haven't seen before in October, but also a new franchise entry for a franchise I quite like. And I was not disappointed. I really, really like this movie. It's not perfect. I have a few complaints, but overall, I think, you know, it reminds me a lot of Curse, and maybe because it's, you know, kind of picking up all of the threads from that, you know, that movie. But I feel like it was a little more well done. The story kept me a little more interested, and yeah, I had a really, really good time. So I liked it a lot. Not my favorite entry in the series. You know, I might not say, oh my god, I loved it, but good.
Okay. Yeah, I liked it too. I do also have complaints. I do have some, you know, some weird thoughts about a couple of things. But I did like a lot of what goes on, and I think I'd probably rank it a bit higher than Curse, just to sort of directly compare it to the last one. I'd say Curse was a nice step in the right direction, and this one was kind of a bit better. There was a couple of odd choices here or there that I thought was a bit strange,
sure.
But overall, no, I had fun. And I think what I'd commend it for, and we'll talk about this more in spoilers, obviously, but it's amazing to me how this movie has embraced its own continuity. Like this franchise, where Don Mancini, who's written every film, and he's directed now the last 3 of them, because now he's done 5, 6, and 7. Like, he's actually embraced everything, because slasher movies, we're so used to them kind of just pretending a lot of things didn't happen. in the previous films. We're used to that, and we're used to most other franchises having rebooted by now or getting remade by now. And this franchise, it kind of felt like it kind of not soft rebooted, but like Bride of Chucky, it kind of felt like it left behind a lot of those first 3 movies. Beyond the fact that Chucky was a thing, it kind of left the rest of it behind. And these last 2 movies, and this one especially, is embraced all of its history in ways that I was not expecting. So I will commend it for that.
I think what's so impressive about it is that, like you said, it's been so long, and most franchises at this point would probably be like, hey, let's give it a full-on reboot, kind of start over from scratch. And it doesn't do that, and it's especially crazy with the 5th and 6th movies being so out there, and such a departure from kind of the tone and what the series was up to that point, and then to be able to like veer back and be like, no, we're gonna go back to being like a straight up horror movie for the most part, and but also we're not gonna forget like all that crazy wacky stuff from those 2 movies. That all still counts, and it's pretty refreshing.
And it still does. I think you meant 4 and 5 when you said that, not 5 and 6.
Oh, sorry, 4 and 5.
Yeah. But and it does new things as well. Like, it actually has new ideas, and it plays with them a little bit, to the point where I was like, oh man, I'm actually kind of like trying to figure out what the little twist is going to be here, because it's presenting me with things that aren't quite adding up, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And
I think with this movie, this was the most I've ever been engaged in the plot. Like,
okay, I can see that.
Like other movies, I might have maybe might have been better done, or I might have enjoyed more, but the plot might have been a little more simplistic, and I wasn't constantly trying to guess like, oh, what's gonna happen. Like, where this, I was like, ooh, I want to know like what's going on, and like, oh man, I didn't see that coming, and ooh, that was really cool. Like, there's a lot of moments like that for me in this.
Yeah, and I think like the character Nika is improved. I think, like, 'cause she was fine in the last movie, but this movie like gives her a lot more sort of meat as to what she's going through. So that's pretty cool. You have...
like, it was in the previous movie, she kind of just felt like you're maybe just typical like main character, final girl or whatever, but in this it was like, oh no, like now I'm actively rooting for her. Like, not that I wasn't rooting for her in the last movie, but this movie I was like, oh, I'm now really invested and want to see.
It was interesting because it was kind of like, because typically when they bring the final girl back, it's usually just to die off in the opening 5 minutes, but it was no, she's the main character again in this one, and I think it's really interesting that it does that. It's just like, okay, this is someone who they think is actually the killer, and she's in a mental asylum because of that. How does that weigh on her? What effect does that have, and where does it go with that? And it does kind of explore that in ways that I've not seen other horror franchises doing, at least not that I can remember anyway. So no, if I have a complaint, just sticking in the spoiler-free section for now, if I have a complaint about the movie, is that I do think the design of the hospital itself is a little bit too unrealistic. It feels like a movie set. Especially the sort of the reception desk and the 2 hallways that are right behind it, and this sort of V shape, and they're really long. It feels so super clean and so super stylized that I'm like, this doesn't feel like a real hospital. This feels like, oh, this is gonna be a fancy movie hospital kind of thing.
Yeah, everything seemed like brand new, like nothing felt lived in. It would have been nice to, I mean, you could still have like a more recent or newer hospital or whatever, but still kind of make it feel like that it's been around and people walk through there and sleep there and stuff. Everything just had this kind of shiny little gloss over it that was like a little
Yeah, that'd be my one complaint. Other than that, though, I don't actually think it looks like, again, like the last one, we commented that it didn't have that shitty direct-to-video look to it that a lot of them do. And again, this feels like it could have been released in theaters. So there's no reason why it couldn't have been.
I'm a little mad it wasn't. I would have loved to have seen this in the theaters.
It probably had a limited run in select locations, I imagine.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I had one showing in like New York.
Yeah, like
for the weekend.
Yeah, like a small like little premiere somewhere. But,
yeah, it probably did.
But yeah, I would have liked to have gone if there was more options.
Now, all else we can really say in the spoiler-free section is I will say it does play on your expectations of a Chucky movie a little bit. It does. The last like 20 minutes are really insane compared to what you probably thought you were going to get going in, and you know, it is fun. Like, I think there was a point in the movie where I was really excited early on by what I thought it was doing, and then it kind of veered away from that into this other thing, and I was like, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. But then it sort of whipped back round for me in the last like 20-30 minutes where I was like, oh no, it's doing this, and I got more into it again. So it kind of, I was on a bit up and down with it, but I ended in a happy place. So
Yeah.
you know, I started and ended happy. Just a little bit in the middle where I was like, I wasn't sure how I felt about a certain new development for the series. But
Okay, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
yeah, but well, you know, we'll talk about it. Anything else you want to add before we go over the wall?
No, not really. Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff I want to talk about is going to be spoilery stuff.
Yeah,
so.
all of it is so, yeah.
I mean, basically, yeah, just obviously, I think we're both saying that it's pretty darn good. And especially if you like the last movie or the series in general, this is definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I think if you've not seen the previous movies, it's almost has no point. It is definitely the next movie in a franchise of...
True, yeah.
And it's definitely one that's like the continuity is important. Like I feel like anything in the first four you could probably watch on its own, maybe even the fifth. But the fifth one, not really. The sixth one, it's kind of designed to work as a fresh start if you're just jumping in there. But this one, you definitely need to have at least seen the previous film, I think. And ideally the whole set, because there's so many callbacks, I think, to the other stuff that you really benefit if you've seen all of them. I'm actually really glad that we rewatched them all over the last couple of months because everything was fresh, everything like... So when they name dropped a character, I was like, I know who that is. I remember it because it's not been years since I watched, you know, whatever movie that was. So, yeah, so there you go. So full spoilers from this point on for Cult of Chucky. So, where do you begin? Where do you begin with the spoilers? Because, Jesus Christ, this goes in some weird places.
I think maybe the first, like, oh, holy shit, moment for me was probably with Andy taking out the Chucky head.
Oh yeah, let's start there. Yeah, let's go all the way. So the opening. So first of all, there was a post-credit scene of the last movie where Chucky arrives at Andy's house and Andy pretends he doesn't see him, then pulls out a shotgun and then gives him like a one-liner, like, "Oh, handle this," and then shoots him, and that's the end of the movie. And
I kind of thought that they were maybe gonna write that off as being like, oh yeah, that doesn't count, because it's like, how do you go from there? And
the funny thing about that is that we said in the last review, we only did this like 2 weeks ago, we said, I hope they don't bring him back because his acting in that one scene was terrible. To be fair to him, he's in this one a lot more. He is better, like, because the one-liner he gave in that clip, that post-credit scene, and it's still terrible because they do a flashback to it near the start of this, and he still sounds terrible in that flashback, but he's actually okay for the main parts of the movie in this one, so he's not great, but he's fine.
Yeah, he was... that was like a minor complaint I had, is he's not the best actor, but I mean, if I really wanted to, I could probably chalk it up to maybe he has like some weird like maybe like PSTD stuff, you know, from
the character
living this, the character,
I guess. I was like, the actor, what?
That maybe that's why, because part of his thing is that he kind of seems like a little stiff and wooden, but I don't know, if you wanted some headcanon stuff, maybe you could say like, oh well, maybe he's like constantly scared and paranoid and kind of maybe it comes off a little weird because of that or something. Yeah.
Also, I want to point out something else about the end of the last one, because it becomes very relevant later on. We were really confused and we were kind of disappointed because there was like 2 almost epilogue scenes in the last movie. And the first one was that Chucky arrived at the niece's house, Nika's niece, who was the other survivor, this little girl, and
Alice.
There you go. And it seemed like he was trying to like take over her body. He was doing the ritual, and the camera like panned out. We got the jump scare with the ant sort of jumping up at the bottom, and it was kind of lame. And it was also partly because it was like, well, Chucky had accepted in the previous movie that he just wanted to be the doll now, so it felt like it was going against that. And then secondly, it didn't make a whole lot of sense when we then got a post-credit scene with Andy and Chucky was still a doll. Like, how did those interact with it? How were those both still a thing? The funny thing is this movie actually answers that. I still think it's a complaint for the past movie though, because when you're watching it, it doesn't feel like coherent. It feels like a mistake rather. It's not intriguing when you watch the past movie and it does these two scenes. You're not intrigued by it. Just feels like, no, how does that work? Like, you're not intrigued by it. You're just kind of like, that's wrong. What? No.
Yeah.
So,
like, if I go back and watch it now, it won't bother me as much knowing what happens. But it is still like a little bit weird.
So yeah, Andy's on a date at the start of the movie. He's what is he, like 35, something like that? I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, mid-late 30s, and he's on a date with this woman, and it's kind of awkward. And then she's asking all these questions that he doesn't want to answer, and then he's like, "Wait, you googled me, didn't you?" And he's like, "Effing internet!" Like, he says that under his breath. He hates the fact that the internet exists because people can look him up.
Yeah.
And she's asked him all these questions, like, oh, there was all these murders and I left it, and she basically leaves because it's just too weird and awkward. And she's nice enough about it, but you kind of tell that, okay, this is what his life is like. No one really wants to be around him because of everything that's happened.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And he goes home. He's got this sort of isolated cabin. It's in the woods. He goes out there. He goes in, and he just, he's having a drink. Everything seems normal.
And you see some like nice nods to like other movies. Like I think he had his military uniform like on the wall.
Oh, I never noticed that, but yeah, it's like the post-credit scene from the last one. He had photos in that one as well. Yeah, he had photos of family members from the previous movies and stuff. Yeah, there was some nice little touches. And then he opens this cupboard. He goes up to this cupboard and he opens it. Because obviously during this scene I'm thinking, right, well, if we're back with Andy, then that post-credit scene happened. Because that was clearly a tease. That was almost like the Marvel-style post-credit tease that Andy's coming back. And we've got Andy. And he goes over to the cupboard and he pulls out Chucky's head. And it's the one from the previous movie with the stitches and all that. And he's alive. He's like, he's been keeping him locked in this place, and you can see like nails sticking out of him. There's like a chunk of his head missing from where the shotgun blast went off. And apparently how he spends his nights is that he tortures Chucky. Because he pulls out a blowtorch. He's like, oh, this is what we'll use today. And he burns him. And I'm like, well, no wonder you can't get a date, because even if you're pretending you're okay, you're really screwed up. Like, this is what you're doing at night. Like, even if I know he deserves it. Don't get me wrong. I know he deserves it. But you're still screwed up.
Man, I could have probably watched a whole movie of just this. Like, I love just the idea of them like almost becoming like reluctant friends or something. like I was like, oh man, I hope they kind of like are like a little buddy or something, like in a weird way. Where like obviously they hate each other and he's torturing them, but at the same time it's like, well, we're all each other has. And even like Chucky comments like, "Oh, like what happened on the date?" Like, "Oh, I liked her."
Yeah, was she a natural redhead? I think he says something like that. Yeah. Okay, this is unexpected. And then it cuts to Nika. Nika's like getting let out. She's been told she's going to this other hospital, and we see her journey there, and she arrives, and the other patients meet her, and they're all kind of concerned because she's the only multiple murderer who's like in the ward. And they're like, yeah, she like butchered the whole family. Like, we don't want her to be here. Like, this is weird. And they're all like freaking out. And so she makes friends with this one guy. Malcolm is his real name, but we find out soon that he has like schizophrenia. He has multiple personality disorder. And I
think they call him Multiple Malcolm at some point.
Yeah, but we don't know this at first. We think he's just been a nice guy and talking to her, and he kind of flirts with her because she mentions the Chucky doll. And he's like, oh, you're still into redheads, because he's a redhead. And it's a little bit awkward, but then it cuts to them having sex. And keep in mind, she's still in a wheelchair. So we get this kind of, I wouldn't say rough, but it's definitely the most erotic wheelchair sex I've seen in a while. In quite some time.
It is like a very jarring, like, cut to, like, oh, shit.
But what I think is interesting about it, though, is that she's probably not had the chance to have sex in like years. But, for the last 4 years, she's been in this maximum security place. She's probably just jumped at the chance to.
Yeah. Well, there is the kind of weird thing we find out later on. I don't know if that counts, but. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, sure, but she was hypnotized during that. So as far as she knows, she's not done anything like that in 4 years. Yeah. I was wondering why you were going all awkward on me there. I was like, what? What did I say? But yeah, she was hypnotized. We get it. Yeah. So, but we find out almost the next scene that he's like he changes personality, and then you see this look in her face like, oh god, I just had sex with one of his personalities, and he's like switching, and they're all based on real people. Like one of them is Mark Zuckerberg, is one of them.
Oh yeah.
He keeps flipping between these different people that are based on real characters. But so we're interested in him. We're interested in this woman who's like kind of really like protective. When the first Chucky doll arrives. Which, well, I say arrives, Jennifer Tilly shows up with it and claims to be the foster mother of young Alice and tells Nika that Alice is dead, which just about breaks her. And she says, oh, she'd want you to have this. This is the doll that I bought her to get over the fear of it. And this is where our first Chucky doll comes into the picture. And this other character like thinks it's her baby and like starts taking care of it and like won't let it go. There's another woman who's really skeptical of her and is always angry all the time, and that's kind of our sort of core patience that we get to know. So
there's also an older schizophrenic lady.
Oh, you're right, yeah, and she because she said she got a phone call from Chucky and he's like, oh, Chucky's coming, and Nika at this point is still of the opinion that she was crazy, that none of this actually happened. She's trying to like at the very least she's pretending that it wasn't a doll, that she's just it's her.
And basically everyone kind of seems to have their own like interactions or thoughts like about the doll or whatever, but they kind of just chalk it up as like, oh, these are all crazy people who are being influenced by, you know, Nika's stories and stuff, and they're kind of reacting and latching onto it. But then obviously in reality you find out like, oh, no, that they actually like have been interacting with Chucky.
So what I like about at this point in the movie, because basically the big sort of climax of this first chunk is that after learning our niece, who Nika says, like, she has quite a good little speech actually in the group therapy where she says, I made my niece an orphan and I'm never going to get to see her again, and I love her. Like, she has this like really good speech, and then she finds out she's dead, and you know Jennifer Tilly of course is like, and I should say Tiffany, but it's Tiffany inside Jennifer Tilly's body, just for the record. But she's like, oh, if I was to say how she died, it'd be a broken heart. Like, you know, she rubs it in thick. And so later on that night, Chucky gets up, he wakes up, and he starts like sauntering through the halls. And he actually runs into the older crazy woman, who's like, oh, you're not real, I'm just delusional. Is like, yeah, I'll come back for you, bitch. Like, he's just, you know, he's being Chucky. I will actually, to make a weird complaint actually about Chucky himself in this movie, for some reason, I think his voice in this was sometimes a little bit off. I don't know if it's just because Brad Dourif's getting older and maybe he can't hit the same sort of tone that he used to be able to.
Maybe.
There was some scenes where it sounded fine, but there was some scenes where it just felt like a little bit off. Like I don't know.
The only thing, well, I don't know, maybe if he was trying to give like tiny slight altered inflections on different dolls, maybe, because I think I mean I could be wrong, maybe I have to go back and watch it, but I do know what you're talking about, but I feel like I didn't notice it as much when he was like, you know, doing the original doll, the, you know, head in Andy's room. And
okay, that's fair. Yeah, that may be right. That may be right. But it was distracting me because like I have a very specific voice in my head for how Chucky sounds, so it felt a little bit off. But anyway, so he saunters. We see him make this long trip all the way to Nika's room. And do you know what I liked about this? I actually really liked this whole sequence because it was like the first time in the series where instead of following the victim and wondering where Chucky is, we're following Chucky, and we don't know, like, is she still in the room? Is she hiding? Is she prepared for him? And then the actual twist is that he gets in there and she's tried to commit suicide. She's slit her wrists and the blood is dropping. And he's just kind of, he looks down at the blood, he looks back up at her, he's like, oh, what? You know, and I was, oh, this is, I'm like, man, this is an unexpected twist. And then she wakes up in the morning and she's fine, and she looks at her arm and it's all stitched up, and she looks over the side of the bed and Chucky's written in the blood. I can't remember the exact phrase. It was something like, not quite yet, or not yet, bitch, or something to that effect. And I thought, oh, is this whole movie going to be him like she wants to die but he won't let her? Like, that is actually a really cool spin on the Chucky sort of formula, if you will. And that's not actually quite what it is. There's an element of that to it, but that's not, but I get really excited here and I was really into this. But then another Chucky doll arrives in the mail. Actually, no, the first Chucky doll is the one the doctor had. I'm sorry, that was the first one that was around. It's the new one who arrived with Jennifer Tilly that I'm getting confused here. There's one that arrives in the mail later, right? There's too many dolls.
Right.
I'm not keeping track of them. The doctor had one that he used for therapy, and then Jennifer Tilly brought the second one. The second one being the Chucky that we're seeing running around killing people. But he kills the old crazy lady, and she's dead, and it says written in her blood, Chucky did it. Which everyone's like, oh, is that her going crazy and kind of thing. So he's actually, I was like, oh man, he's actually gonna make them all think she's like killing people again. This is potentially like a really great idea where Chucky's actually screwing with her mind. He's going to make her go crazy by tormenting her and doing all this stuff.
It's a real interesting location and a real interesting group of characters, and yeah, it just makes like a fun, setting where it's not like, they can't just run away or something. They're all stuck here, and, nothing they say is ever going to be believed. And it just makes for, like, as you're watching it, it's like, ooh, like, I really don't know where this is going to go. And you kind of, like, I'm starting to get excited because it's like, oh, like, yeah, no one's going to believe her. And also, like, oh, how is Chucky going to keep killing people? Like, you can't just keep doing, like, the, same thing and stuff. And it's just, I don't know, it's really good like idea and setting and everything about it. I feel like came together pretty well. Yeah,
I think the setting really did help shake it up, and the fact that we're back to a character knowing who Chucky is and being like crazy about it and thinking they were just imagining it, and then like Chucky comes back into life and we see that reaction. That's interesting. We've done that a little bit in the past, but I don't think Andy ever believed that it was fake. Like Andy always did when he was a kid.
Oh right. Yeah.
And he just kind of went along with what the parents said. Whereas here, like, she's actually been convinced medically that no, you imagined this, you killed those people because you were jealous of your sister and whatever. But you have that first moment when the second doll arrives and the other woman's carrying the first doll and they pass in the hallway, and there's this moment where they look at it and it's like, oh, and I actually thought at the time, he's going to switch places at one point. He's going to like pretend he's the other one, and they're going to do a bit of switcheroo. Little did I know that not only does that kind of happen, later on, like, stuff starts happening with both Chuckies at the same time.
I definitely did not see that coming.
no, because the one Chucky's with the woman outside, and he gives her the finger at the window, and then the other Chucky in the psychiatrist's office is starting to do stuff as well. He's like moving around. He ends up killing the other lady who's like really skeptical, like, and angry at Nika. Which is actually maybe the best kill in the movie, actually, because that's when he breaks the glass. He throws the thing up at the sort of the skylight. It's
like compressed oxygen, I think.
Yeah, it was compressed oxygen, yeah. And it all smashes. It comes down in slow motion, and like this big piece just decapitates her. And it's kind of beautiful. It's a great kill.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. As I was watching it, I was like, oh, all right, so glass is going to rain down on her, like, that sucks, but I thought like she would just kind of like brace herself, and then the glass would just kind of dig into her or whatever. What I wasn't expecting was like a gigantic chunk of it to like actually decapitate her and then have her like head roll on the floor. It's like, oh my god, I did not see that coming.
Yeah, it was a great kill. There's some other good ones, admittedly, as well, but that one was the first one that really stood out, is honest, because the first woman who got killed was killed kind of off screen. We sort of found out in the aftermath, but this was cool.
And also, it helps to. This is set during the winter. I'm not sure the exact location. Probably maybe somewhere in the Northeast or so, because it's snowing out. So it also gives like a nice visual. Like he smashes the window, and then like little bits of snow is kind of like drifting in and.
Chucky's from New Jersey, so northeasterns, like, even if it's not in that state anymore, it's pretty believable that it's around that kind of part of the country.
Yeah. But I just thought it helped add a little bit to the atmosphere too.
Yeah, because it's the first one as well, I think, that it's been really snowy. Even though a couple of them are set at Christmas, I don't think they were overly snowy movies. So we have all this go down, and like all this is happening. We're like, man, because the other thing that was happening throughout this chunk of the movie as well, just before this, is that it cut back to Andy, and he was with the head was still there, and I'm like, wait, how does this happen? Like, the head's still there, and I thought, oh, maybe this is all set after or before. Maybe we'll find out that scene at the end of the post-credit scene was like after all this, or maybe we'll find out that all these hospital sections take place after the Andy stuff. Maybe this will have a conclusion that'll get Chucky escaping with Jennifer, maybe, and like. But then there's a point where he actually phones the hospital, and it's like, oh wait, no, this is like the same time. What's going on? Then we have 3 Chuckies that are active. What is happening? And honestly, the only explanation we ever get is that he basically he read on voodooForDummies.com, I believe was the website. Yeah. Just a new trick where he duplicates himself into a doll rather than just, moves himself.
Which, and it's kind of funny how, they're going back to the horror roots, but then they still have, like, this feels more like a nod to, like a Bride or Seed that had, I feel like bigger jokes like that. And I don't know, I'm kind of okay with just that simple explanation because the movie's so fun. Yeah. It's like, we don't need a big hullabaloo about why this is happening. It's just like, I mean, if he already knows enough, magic to put his soul in a doll in the first place, I guess he can learn another spell to multiply himself or put his consciousness in multiple bodies.
I wasn't sure how I felt about it at first. Obviously, like, I got a sudden rush of emotion as I realised, oh wait, he's in multiple dolls. And I'm like, well, what's happening here? Like, is he in multiple at the same time? Can he just, like, pass around them? Like, is he moving through them and, like, taking whatever one he wants? Like, what's going on? Given where it goes later, I'm kind of okay with it. But I wasn't sure how I felt at first because it was kind of like, does this take away from the idea of him being the killer doll? Because at this point, he becomes more of a supernatural entity because he can be in multiple places at once. So, he has, like, an army of them. Does that take away from having the one true Chucky kind of idea?
I can see that. But at least for this movie, it doesn't bother me. If we get multiple movies in the future, I don't know how often you can pull this trick out. Well, that's the thing. At least for this one, I feel like it works. That's
the thing. I think it has to be in the next one if they make another one, which I think they will. This feels like it's setting up another movie, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I mean, we'll get to it when we talk about the end. But I was like, oh well, they better do a sequel.
Yeah, I feel like he's got it planned. I feel like Curse was the start of a trilogy. I feel like this was the second part of a new trilogy.
I can see that. It's like a Nika trilogy.
Yeah, it really feels that way, but. So another cool thing that happens that I did like is that he possesses or goes, makes a copy into multiple Malcolm. But I thought that was interesting because, like, he has multiple personalities, and I was like, is that just one of his personalities now? Like, will he switch to another one and then switch back to Chucky? Is that, like, going to happen? And sure enough, he actually changes to another personality later on, after being Chucky for a while, which is kind of funny. But no, it's and I think I kind of like this whole idea of him spreading the legend that is Chucky, because it ties better into the idea from the the 5th movie when he made that choice that he likes being the killer doll. He doesn't just want to be a human killer anymore. And even though he kind of gets some of his wish later on, his original wish, he's still the killer doll. He's still doing that as well. The whole idea of building his legend as part of his character now. So it kind of fixes that. Of course, the fact that he's in multiple dolls fixes those endings from the last movie. It makes them make more sense. Yeah. So that's okay. And we find out that he actually did possess Alice and killed with her for a while until he got bored with her.
Yeah.
And that ended up getting her killed. Well, seemingly. I can see them twisting that in the next one, actually, that maybe she's not dead, but...
We do see a little brief glimpse of her as was it like a dream or a ghost or something?
It's a dream. There's no ghost in this movie.
Not like a literal ghost, but like a vision.
Okay, sure.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a dream that Nika has, and we see what the actress looks like now. I assume it's the same actress, given everyone else they've brought back.
I think so, yeah.
I'd assume it's the same actress. In 4 years makes a big difference when she was like 8 in the last one. So now she's like 12, and. Yes, and it plays with this whole because her name's Alice. There's this red shoe motif that comes into it.
Oh, I didn't really think about that, but
sure. Wait, does Alice have red shoes?
In Alice in Wonderland?
Does Alice in Wonderland have red shoes?
Maybe.
I'm not actually sure anymore. I may just be thinking of Wizard of Oz.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. It's been a while since I saw those.
But a while since I've seen it as well. But that's what I thought when they first popped up, because there was a whole red shoe motif going on, and it comes back up again later, so it must mean something.
Yeah.
Well, you're a big help, Tim. Thank you very much. Shocking display.
I mean, yeah. Should we dig into this whole creepy, uncomfortable scene then with a psychiatrist or whatever issues and the hypnotism?
So she's getting worse, or at least he thinks she's getting worse because there's more killings happening, and he decides to hypnotize her. And then he drops this heel turn, this bombshell on us, that he has been hypnotizing her for the past 4 years and doing sexual things with her while she's hypnotized, and she can't remember any of it. And he's so creepy. And the funny thing is I love this scene because the punchline to all of this is fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I thought it was definitely like upsetting. I was like, like, do you have to go there and make this all like creepy and rapey and stuff? But I mean, luckily they don't get into too much detail, and he quickly does get.
Chucky basically hits him in the back of the head with a lamp or something, or it's a bottle. It's like a bottle or a glass of booze, and he looks down and he's like, man, this guy's sicker than I am. Right?
Yeah.
And then it happens again later on in the movie when she's back in the office in a straitjacket, and Chucky knocks him out again. And this time he's like threatening other stuff, like, oh, you'll go back and no one will believe you. It's your word against mine, and but I'll always remember our visit. And again, it's really creepy. And Chucky does the exact same thing as he did in the first scene, where he smacks him over the back of the head. He's like, man, I don't know what to do with this guy. Kill him or
take notes from him or
take notes from him. Yeah, that was it. Kill him or take notes from him. that was like, as dark as it was, like Chucky's punchlines to it, especially the second one when it became like a running joke, was really funny. So
well, I like I like these larger than life monsters. Talking about Chucky, not the psychiatrist, but I want to root for Chucky, in a weird way. So I like that. Oh, here's a bad guy that's worse than Chucky. Let's see, Chucky give it to him. And maybe they could have gone like a little farther with him, maybe doing some worse crap to him. But it was at least good that he got a little comeuppance.
Right. So let's talk. So just to set up this sort of final act then, because we're kind of getting into that territory.
And there's one more doll we haven't mentioned.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was to talk about. Andy, when he can't get through on the phone and no one will talk to him, he decides to drive off to the hospital. However, he also takes out his own Chucky doll that he had in a cupboard, which has short hair. He has cut Chucky hair. And I'm like, okay, what's he going to do with this? And I almost thought that he was going to put himself in the doll so he could fight Chucky on a level playing field.
That's 100% what I thought.
Yeah, and that's what I thought.
I'm actually a little bummed that they didn't do that.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll do that in the next one. Who knows? Yeah. But so he sends that. But if at first you don't know he's posting it though, you think he's just going with it. You think he's just taking it with him, and it's after he's just been rejected at the front gate, and then he punches the guard, so he gets taken in and locked up in the hospital on his own. So you think, well, what's your plan here, Andy? You just got locked up. But then this FedEx package arrives, and it's this third Chucky doll with the cut hair. And it's during this whole scene, around this time with Nika in the straitjacket, and we have the other two Chucky dolls we already have come in. Worth mentioning as well, one of the Chucky dolls, the one who's been like held with the mother who's like thinks it's their son. She tries to
breastfeeding him.
Yeah, she breastfeeds him, and then because she is crazy, she tries to suffocate him with a pillow, and then he decides to kill her by ripping off his own arm and shoving it down her throat. It's pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie.
And I love once you get the scene where you see like all the Chuckies together. I like that they're all like visually like really distinctive. Like that one is like missing an arm and has kind of crazy hair, and then the other one, for the most part, looks normal. But then he does have like a little bit of a melted hand from earlier we saw.
And we have cut hair Chucky. Because it's easily differentiate. You can differentiate between them.
And then, but it's just cool like seeing them all together and being like, oh, it's almost like with like gremlins and stuff when you see them all together, but it's like, oh, there's like the striped gremlin, and then there's like the goofy looking one or something. So
the three of them are all together, and they're kind of like debating like what their plan is, and there's a weird joke about Hannibal being cancelled because one of them says it bequeaths you not to do this. It's like, bequeath? You sound like Hannibal Lecter. I can't believe they cancelled that show. I can't. It wasn't that good. But
I wonder if like anyone involved in the movie was involved with the show or something. Is that supposed to be like an inside joke?
I have no idea. I can tell you though that Don Mancini, the writer of all these movies and the director of these last three, is one of the producers and maybe writers on Channel Zero right now.
Yeah.
I noticed his name in the credits on the last couple of episodes. So
Yeah, I saw that watching it. Like this past weekend too. I was like, oh hey, weird.
small cinematic world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have some fun banter and stuff, and they're all arguing like who gets to kill Andy. Like, oh, I had a bit worse day than you. It's like, come on, you got to suck titty today. Like, and you know, it's also some fun banter, and then they agree that the one who gets his hair cut deserves to kill Andy.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, it's you, man, go for it.
Yeah, so we'll tackle that before we get to Nika stuff. Because so short-haired Andy, Chucky, goes to Andy's cell and goes in to kill him, and he comes at him. And Andy fights back. He's not a kid anymore. Like, he has a proper fight with him. And it turns out the reason why he sent this doll here in the mail, and the reason why he cut the hair so he knew which one it was, is because he puts his hand inside Chucky and pulls out a handgun. He snuck a handgun inside Chucky. But which, by the way, we should mention that this one's alive now because the other two Chuckies like did the spell on him, did the the ritual.
And sometimes I forget, like, because they're alive, that means they have like guts and intestines and stuff.
Which, to be fair, they established that in like the second or third movie. Like there was like proper insides in them.
Yeah, it's just something I usually like tend to forget until it actually like happens, and I'm like, oh yeah, they have like blood and guts in there.
So he pulls out a gun, he shoots him a few times, and then he just stomps his head to make sure he's dead, and his head just—it's almost like stomping a watermelon, but you know, it's all blood and brains and stuff, and it just mushes together, but the outside is the plastic from the doll. It's actually a really cool effect. It's just so satisfying watching him stomp into this head. But the funny thing is that this movie not only has this one fantastic stomping head kill, it has a second fantastic stomping head kill, which leads me back to Nika and the psychiatrist. So the other Chucky that's still in there with her does the incantation on her. And okay, where's this going? Okay, I don't know, where's this going? And we actually have this. Now, one of the things I mentioned in the last review is that Fiona Dourif, who plays Nika, looks a lot like her father, who voices Chucky, and who played him briefly, visually in the first movie and a little bit in the last one in a flashback. And I thought they looked a lot like. I thought that she looked even more like him in this one throughout, because she, her hair was a bit more over, like she wasn't as made up. She was kind of a bit more rough because she's just in a hospital and she's not taking making herself look pretty, I guess. And she has the long hair and stuff like her dad does, or did in the movies, and so she gets possessed by Chucky, and but again, it's a copy, so the dolls are still there, but she's become also Chucky, and almost immediately she does such a good impression of her dad.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It is so unreal. So the doctor put her in these red shoes, these red big wedge heeled shoes, and because she's possessed, she can walk. She stands up and she sort of feels her boobs, and she's like, "Oh, there's perks to this." But she immediately puts on the Jersey accent that Chucky has, and the way she smirks, the way she looks at him, the laugh when she starts laughing, it's Chucky. She does such a good it's insane. It's almost like I have to believe if this was a planned thing when she was cast in the last movie. No, we're casting you because when he possesses you in the next movie, you're going to nail it because you look like him and you sound like him.
It's weird. Well, I guess not that weird, but in the last movie, I didn't have a problem with her, but I didn't overly think like, wow, like, she's a great actress or anything. But in this movie, I was like pretty impressed. Like, yeah,
she was fine in the last one. She's pretty good throughout most of this, and then it gets to this part where she's possessed by by Chucky, in real life, her dad, and she just, because she looks like him, when she does the smile, it's like, holy shit! It's like you believe it. Do you know that you get those episodes of TV shows where two characters will swap bodies? I just watched the episode of Third Rock from the Sun where Sally and Dick swap bodies, or it happened a lot. It happened once in Angel, which of course is the spin-off to the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But lots of TV shows have those episodes, and they're always fun for the actors because the actors will try and imitate what the other actor usually does. They'll try and imitate their mannerisms, and sometimes they're really good at it, and it's really fun. This might be the best example of this that's ever happened, where she is nailing how he talks, and how he like what his mannerisms are. It is fantastic. This is where if I was a little bit like not into the whole multiple Chuckies thing, this was the moment where I was like, no, I'm back on board. This is insane and it's amazing. Yes.
Yeah, there's so much going on, and it's I don't know, it really is just like a fun ride where, you know, I'm not thinking about it too much. Like early in the movie, there are little instances where I'm like, you know, putting stuff together in my head, but when you get to this point, it's just like really fun to just sit back and be like, all right, just whatever you're gonna do, just take me for the ride. I am all on board at this point.
Yeah, this last chunk was great. Like she kills multiple Malcolm. Oh, actually, it's Chucky from behind that actually kills him with a drill.
Yeah.
She just gets into the laugh. It's actually her and Chucky laugh together, which is when the laugh comes out, and it's you almost can't tell which one's which. They're laughing the exact same way. It's great.
Yeah. And then and that was like a nice nod, like you said earlier. You know, he kind of starts freaking out because Chucky is inside of him, but he's has multiple personalities, so he kind of starts like going back in between and being like, oh, wait a minute, like I'm not Chucky, I'm no one, and then from out of nowhere behind him gets killed. And Joe, I think that was a pretty like gruesome scene too.
Yeah, it's pretty gruesome. And Joe, I think, and we actually glossed over the stomping head kill. That was the whole point I went on to that scene in the first place. When she first gets possessed, she stands up, she like feels her boobs and stuff, and then like he's on the ground and she's like, I'm going to kill you, and she just stomps him in the head with a big high heel repeatedly until his head's just mush. It looks great. I still think I like the glass falling kill a little bit better, but this was really good. It's preference. Like, you know, 2 good head stomp kills and then the glass kill, I think, are the highlights, the kills in the movie. But
yeah, I'd say so.
But yeah, so she's, you know, acting like Chucky, and she goes to see Andy, and she doesn't kill him. She just sort of locks him in the room and says, "Oh, Tag, you're it." It kind of implying that they're going to blame him for all these deaths now, because once they see him here and they look into his past, it's like, oh wait a minute, this guy's the killer, which is partly why I think it's definitely setting up a sequel. That and the post-credit scene, which we'll get to when we get to it. Meanwhile, outside, Jennifer Tilly's shown up. She's killed the security guard with the nail file like she's done in the last couple of movies. And you know, that's actually a pretty fun kill because the blood kind of spurts forward and hits the window. So you know, a bit of fun, bit of inventiveness. But anyway, do you know why I think this ending works so well? On top of the fact that it's fun, and on top of the fact that Fiona Dourif is doing such a good like impression, and that almost feels like I'm belittling it. It's just an impression. It's not. It's more than that. But she's done such a good job of emulating what her father does. But what I think is special beyond that, and why it works, is because right from the start of this series, Chucky's whole thing was to get into a human body, and he never actually achieved it. And as much as he did accept that he liked being the doll, and we really liked the fact that he made that choice, there's still something special about finally seeing him in a human body again, where he can wreak havoc. Where no, this is what it's been building to. All of these movies, 7 movies in, he's finally achieved it. And what does that, what do we do in the next movie with that? Like, is she now the leader of the Chuckies and we have all the dolls as well in the next one? Like, what's the next one called? War of Chucky?
Actually, that's funny. I was thinking, like, ooh, I hope the next one's like World War Chucky or something like that.
I could see it. I could see it.
And yeah, as they're, it's so funny, because even though it makes sense in the movie, it still felt really weird seeing, Nika, like make out with Tiffany. Because
that's what I was just getting to, because she comes outside, and by this point as well, she's put on like this coat and this red scarf, which is very reminiscent to like the sort of coat that he had at the start of the first movie, and she's sort of sauntering out, and she's like, "Hey babe," and then they make out, and she's like, "Well, this is different." It's like, I'm okay with it.
And it's funny because it just seems weird. Like it makes sense in the movie because it's Chucky and Tiffany, but then it just seems weird because like, well, no, because I know that's Brad Dourif's daughter, and then that is supposed to be like Brad Dourif's love interest. Yeah, there's
a weird almost incest thing in a meta way, but it's not really. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Not at all. And then and as they're driving off, you see the actual Tiffany dolls in the back as well.
If Jennifer Tilly was actually Fiona Dourif's mother, though, if her and Brad Dourif were a couple in real life, this would be weird as shit. But they're not.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's funny though that Jennifer Tilly can say, "Oh, well, she's not actually made out with her dad because it was already in the doll, so that never happened." Yeah, so I was gonna say it's just weird that she can say she's made out with both the father and the daughter, which I feel like people can say, like, maybe not a lot, but there's probably at least enough of a minority of people who can say, "Oh, I've made out with both the mother and the daughter, or both the father and the son," depending, right? And I feel like there's very few people who can say they've crossed the genders. And said, "Oh, father and daughter, or mother and son," but whatever. Actually, I like that touch earlier on when she's on the phone to someone, I think, or she's talking to maybe the security guard, and I actually she's on the phone to Andy. She says, "Oh, it's Tiffany. Oh, sorry, it's Jennifer. I get confused which." Even I don't remember anymore. I thought that was a nice fun, because I feel like most fans probably forget that they switch. She's in Jennifer Tilly's body now.
Yeah.
I think that's a funny little touch that they kind of had a little meta moment where she doesn't remember exactly which one she is anymore.
I think even earlier at the hospital, like someone says like, "Hey, are you?" And she goes like,
"It's Nika."
Oh yeah, and she's like, "Oh no, like I get that all the time," or something like that.
You look exactly like Jennifer Tilly. It's like, "Oh no, I get that all the time," and this exact same voice, Jennifer Tilly uses, but. No, so that's really fun. So we actually end the movie. The bad guys win. Nika Chucky with Jennifer Tilly, or Tiffany Tilly, what we would call her. And then there's a Tiffany doll in the back seat. They've got a doll, and apparently she's also spreaded herself. She's copied herself into the doll as well, so she can be in both places. They ride off laughing maniacally as they've killed everyone in the hospital except Andy, who's been left to presumably take the guilt. The bad guys win. Which is why I think there has to be another movie, right?
Oh, without a doubt. It's I don't know if this counts as a complaint, but I couldn't help but at the end being like, "Oh, wait a minute! Like, that's where it's gonna end." It feels kind of abrupt, but at the same time, maybe it's just because I want more and want to see where it's going.
Yeah, maybe. I think it. Yeah, I think it works when you look at it as like a middle chapter of a trilogy. It does really work.
Oh, yeah.
Like this is Chucky at his worst. He's back in a human body, and he's with Tiffany. They are going to go and do some really bad stuff. Like this is going to be bad. It almost sets you up for this big final fight where Andy and whoever's got allies with, we'll talk about that in a second, like they have to, they need to win now. Like they have to be the ones that stop them. And we need to get Nika back. If we get Chucky out of the body, Nika comes back, so we need to save her. Right, so that's a big thing. But I'd love a movie with Nika's as Chucky for most of it, and maybe until the very end when she maybe gets brought back through winning. And
I feel like they brought like almost everything back at this point, so we'll have to see. Was it Glenn or Glenda and?
Oh god, no. Glenda can stay going. That's fine. So the credits started to roll, and I was like, you know what? The last one had a closing credit scene or post credit scene. I'm waiting this time. I'm keeping track of this. And I was like, but what's it going to be? What could it be? Because the funny thing is looking back, now that I've seen this movie, looking back to the previous one, that post-credit scene was legitimately the Marvel teaser for the next one. It didn't feel like it at the time, but now watching the new one, no, that was teasing where the next one's going. So I'm waiting. Gets to the end of the credits, and Chucky's head's still in Andy's house, right? And he's just kind of there. He's like, oh, man, I want out of here. Blah, blah. And then someone, like a car pulls in, and we just see it from Chucky's perspective inside the house, and we see like someone, we can tell it's a woman just from the footsteps and kind of the shape of the body, walking up to the door, and opens the door, and I'm like, who could this be? Really, who could this be? Because maybe I think it's Jennifer Tilly, like coming to pick him up, kind of thing. But then you open the door, and it's kind of a silhouette, but you can see the hat, and I immediately got who it was. And she steps forward, and the camera, just in case you didn't get it, it cuts to the photo of Andy and her from Child's Play 2. This is his foster sister from Child's Play 2, who's middle-aged now, and she pulls out like her knife. I love how she's still dressed the exact same. She's wearing the exact same hat. She's stuck to her style, I'll give her that. And she's like, oh, I'm Kyle, and my brother Andy told me about you. cut to black. And it does the same thing as the last movie where it comes up saying, and such playing Kyle, like after that scene. And do you know what? When I realised who it was, I legitimately started laughing. Not because I thought it was bad or because I thought it was stupid. I actually think it's a really fun moment that sets you up for the next movie. I just started laughing so hard because this movie, like I said at the start of this review, it's embraced its continuity in such a crazy way that no other slasher franchise, or even maybe even horror franchise, I mean, I guess Saw, but like Saw, like it's so convoluted where this, especially since this, like I said, with Bride of Chucky, it kind of felt like it left this continuity kind of behind, like it kind of restarted to an extent. But then come the last movie, which felt like a reboot at first, but by the end of the movie, no, this is the same Chucky. This is, going back to the past. Then this movie, no, Andy's back, his sister's back. We're going to make references to the military school. Tiffany's still around. Nika carried on from one movie to the next, and now she's like possessed by all of it feels super like. Don Mancini is in such a sort of little fun ride, just like, oh, I can tie all this back in. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. And it's so funny because it, like, I feel like I didn't care like that much about this franchise before. Like, I liked it, but I wasn't that invested in it. And now I feel like I am, in the thick of it. Like, I'm all for these characters. Like, yeah, like, all right, I want to see, like Andy and Kyle team up and like, bring the fight to Chucky and. Yeah,
really, I would do. What's funny about this though is that now, obviously, by the end of the movie, Nika has been possessed, right? And that's fair enough. But before that happened, I was like, wait, are Andy and Nika going to team up? Because one of the things we talked about recently, and it may have even been on the last Chucky movie, about the final girls from different movies in a franchise teaming up to take on the bad guy at some point. I mentioned that, someone had that idea about Friday the 13th at one point. And I think we were joking about it in the last one. Like, what if Andy and Nika team up? Like, and that might happen. It almost happens in this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see... I'd be interested to know maybe what the sales on this are. But
we got this after the last one, so I'm fairly confident that we probably will get an 8th one.
Yeah, and also it's they put it on Netflix like right away. So I wonder if people are going to be looking at the number of watches or something. But yeah, I mean, unless it does like completely abysmal, which I doubt it will. But I don't see any way that we don't get another sequel in this, and I'm pretty excited for it.
As I'm at, like, do you know what I think it is? These last two movies have embraced the continuity, and they've said, no, every single one of these to some extent mattered. And, I'm happy to keep the kid out of it, if you want to, ignore him. But the rest of them all mattered. Because I think before this, the first 3 was like, oh, kid comes after, or Chucky comes after Andy. Second movie, Chucky comes after Andy again. And that's still my favourite of the franchise because it's so much fun, but it was everyone. You could watch Child's Play 3 without watching 2. You could watch 2 without watching 1. You could watch Bride of Chucky without watching any of the first 3. In fact, I think I did. I think the Bride of Chucky was the first one I ever saw. But these last 2 movies, it's like, no, all of it matters, and we're building to some sort of wacky climax. This has been a saga. This is the saga of Chucky. This has been Chucky Episode 7, the Cult, Attack of the Cult. That's what this has been.
And it's so funny too because it's just like, they didn't do anything, like crazy or unheard of. They just like, made an interesting story and gave us a reason to care about the characters. And
they tried some new things. Not all of it I was into right away. I wasn't super into the multiple Chuckies at first, but it's kind of because of where it goes at the end. It did kind of grow on me. I did think the setting... Well, I like the idea of setting at a hospital. I do think the set design was a bit too slick and whatever. Chucky's voice was occasionally not hitting it for me. But they had fun with it. They tried new ideas. They brought all this crazy continuity back. Oh, I'm almost losing Tim. He's back. So here's a question I'm going to pose to you, Tim. Okay. I'm going to make a suggestion, then you can fill me in with any ideas you've got.
All right.
The next character to come back, the surprise entry at the end of the next one, maybe not a post-credit scene, because then it's like, because maybe I'm expecting the next one to be billed as the last one, right? Maybe it won't be, but I'm expecting it to be.
Yeah.
The girlfriend from part 3, she'll show up.
Okay.
She'll show up to help fight, and that's how Andy will have a happy ending, because she'll still be in love with him, and they'll rekindle at the end, and that'll be the happy ending. That's my prediction right now.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
If we can have the sister back from part 2, and we can have Andy back, I don't see why not at this point.
And see, it's funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking, all right, yeah, probably get some. Probably get someone from 3 next. Maybe the like little friend, like the younger kid that Chucky's going after.
I remember him.
But I mean, I could easily see it being like, either one of those, and possibly maybe even both. Who knows?
Yeah, Katherine Heigl's too stuck up to show up for a direct-to-video Chucky movie. She's not going to do it. But I feel like
has she been doing a lot lately though? Maybe.
Oh, she's notoriously bad to work for. I don't think she would ever want. You know how we praised Jennifer Tilly and like Seed, even though we didn't like that one that much, but we praised her for poking fun at herself. I feel like Katherine Heigl is the actress who would never poke fun at herself.
Oh well.
But hey, whatever. I just. You know what? I'm excited for what this silly showdown is. I don't think this is a great movie. I think it has fun with what it does. I think it introduces some new ideas, and I really that whole section at the end with Fiona Dourif doing her father's voice, doing her father's mannerisms. That stuff is fantastic. And like I say, it feels climactic in a big way. It feels like we're headed into the final fight because he's been trying to be a human for 7 goddamn movies, and he finally is, and it's kind of exciting. So.
I mean, I feel like we're kind of seeing like these like horror franchises, they kind of feel like they're withering away, and when you do something new, like a new Nightmare or a new Friday movie, but it's going to be rebooted or whatever, and it's not the same, and it just, something about it feels special to have this long-running franchise come back and still be good and still surprise you, and again, just not being like, we're gonna reboot it, or what's popular nowadays, found footage, all right, let's do the found footage Chucky movie, or something like it. Like, this feels like a proper horror franchise sequel, and it's unfortunately it's kind of rare these days, but I'm really, really happy that this exists.
Yeah, it's a proper horror franchise sequel, but at the same time, it doesn't do that thing where it just copies the previous, because obviously a lot of them are guilty of that. A lot of slasher movies are guilty of just copying the formula, whereas this one, no, it does some different things. So it's kind of the best of both worlds in a weird way. And basically, all I think is, and I think this is the benefit of having this one guy who's written everything from the start, is that he respects his own material. The problem with a lot of slasher franchises is that the guy who's writing parts 7 and 8 isn't the guy who wrote parts 1 and 2. Like, it's someone different in almost every movie. Usually, not always, but this is such a weird thing that this one guy, for 25 goddamn years, has written like every single movie, and it's been this saga where it's grown and evolved and done different things, and it's tried different things. But he respects it. He takes it seriously. Not super seriously, but seriously enough where he gives it respect. So it's like, I'm not just doing a stupid movie, I'm doing a movie that matters to people, and he does something with it. And I think
it's a big like love letter to the fans, but also not just being like too
fan service.
It's a really, really good mix.
Yeah. So as much as I don't think it's a great movie, I think, you could argue some of the stuff's not that scary. Maybe it could use a bit more Chucky at points. But no, for what it does do well, and the fun that it has with what it does pretty great. So, I guess we're ready to rate. Unless you've got any final talking points that you would like to.
I mean, do you want to do any like, rankings, like how does this stack up to the other movies?
We'll do that after we rate. I was going to do that.
Okay.
I was going to do that. We'll rank the whole series, but yeah, we'll do that after we rate it. So what would you give Cult of Chucky out of 10?
Well, like you said, it is not perfect. I do have some minor complaints, but again, it was so much fun that it's pretty easy to maybe overlook like some little annoyances. And I'm gonna give it a pretty surprisingly high score. I mean, I was expecting it to be good because I like the last one. I thought like, oh, it'll probably just kind of be more of the same than the last one, but I was surprised. So I'm gonna give it an 8.
Oh my!
Yeah. I was really happy. With
I mean, to be fair, I'm not that far off. I'm actually going with a 7.5, which puts it above the last one. Certainly, we'll talk about proper rankings in a second. But no, I think if I'm going to get a nice cheap sequel to a franchise, I want something kind of like this that has a little bit of fun, does some new things, but doesn't lose its heart of what it actually is, and has some fun kills on top of it, and has some fun bloody moments. Like I say, that final 15-20 minutes are great. Like I was so into that section of the movie. I'm so pumped for what they might do next. So let's rank the series. Let's each do our rankings of the whole thing. We've got 7 movies. Would you like to go first, Tim, or would you like me to jump in?
I can go first.
Right, hit me. Start with number 7. Worst to best.
So number 7, I'm actually probably gonna give that to 3.
Okay.
And then are we gonna keep going, or are you gonna switch off?
Oh, you keep going. No, keep going. That'll get confusing. I'll forget which one you've said, which one I've said. So just go for it.
So then number 6 would be Seed. And then number 5 would be actually 5 might be Curse. Then 4 would be Bride, 3 would be 1, 2 would be Cult, and 1 would be 2.
Aye. Maybe doing that in reverse order was harder than I thought. Maybe we should just.
Yeah, I was like going through my head, being like kind of like.
Yeah, one's easier.
Okay.
One's easier. So I'm just gonna do it in the proper order just to make it easier on myself. I made Tim do it the hard way. Okay, so yeah, Child's Play 2 is my favorite still. And honestly, yeah, Cult might be my number 2.
Yep.
Cult number 2, and then Child's Play 1. And then Bride. So we're actually pretty similar so far. Then Curse. But the only difference between me and you, honestly, is that I'm going to put Child's Play 3 at number 6 and then Seed at number 7. So I swapped the last 2, but otherwise I think we're pretty similar. So just 7.5. Like I think I rated 1 7.5 as well. So that's 2 7.5s, and then 2 I rated 8. I think I rated Bride 7.5 or thereabouts as well. So that's a good sort of track record where it kept coming back to that similar score. Even though it had some dips, 3 dipped and then Seed dipped, but
yeah, I've always thought like this has never been my favorite series, but I do think it is one of the most consistent like horror series. Like maybe they don't ever reach the heights of some of my other favorite franchises, but they definitely don't reach the lows that a lot of them have.
That's fair. Like I say, it's typically a very consistent series. There's 2 dips, but otherwise, like,
and even those dips, it's not like, oh my god, these are abysmal. Like I can't even look at them.
No, yeah, they're not. They're just kind of, they go from being the like 6 to 7.5 range to being like the 5-ish range. Yeah. There's a notable dip, but it's not like dire. And I commend this. Especially I feel like Leatherface, which is the because we did all Texas Chainsaws. Leatherface is coming out, which is the prequel to the original. Like I'm not feeling very optimistic about that. I'm definitely not feeling optimistic about Jigsaw because we didn't even like the first 7 of those. So I feel like out of these franchises that we're wrapping up with the new entries this month, this is definitely the one like to beat now.
Oh yeah,
which to be
this
fair,
was probably the one.
It would be anyway because it's the first one, but still, like,
yeah. It was probably the one I was most excited for too, and it definitely did not disappoint.
Yeah, it was the one that was most likely to be good. I mean, it could have stunk, but it had the odds were in its favor. Yeah. But yeah, those other ones, they're coming later in the month, so look forward to those. But I guess that wraps up Cult of Chucky. I guess that does. So, first things first, I didn't promote this in the last couple of videos, so I'm going to do it here, right? So before we get to the regular plugs at the end, a new exciting thing that's happening on the Patreons, on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, is we've got a new tier where we start doing commentary tracks. They won't always be horror movies, but the first couple are. There'll be a solo one every month by just me. There'll be a group one by me and Tim and maybe Matt. And those will be, those will be more fun and making fun of the movie. The one with me on my own, I did Halloween this first month. That's a bit more sort of focused, and I mean I'm not super serious about it, but like I'm having fun and kind of like talking about why I like scenes and how breaking it down a little bit. But this first month is free. Like, you don't have to be a patron to actually get these first two that are up there. That's Halloween for the solo, and the group one is Darkness Falls, which is a really bad movie. But
we had fun with it, I think.
Oh yeah, we had fun making fun of it and tangenting to doing all sorts of things. But
if you're gonna watch it, this is probably the way to do it.
Yeah, that's completely fair. So those are completely free though. If you go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV right now, you can click on the commentaries button at the side and you'll get access to those two, and everyone can have them. In November's when they go behind the tier, and you have to be on the tier to do it. But you can try the first ones for free. So I want because those are a new thing we're doing. I think it's worth sort of promoting them a little bit and giving them a little bit of limelight. But so that's the whole thing. Also behind that tier as well, I'll be doing weekly commentaries for Buffy the Vampire Slayer episodes starting in November. So you get another thing on top of that if you like the sound of me talking over things. There's a lot of it coming. So that's cool. But otherwise though, go to Patreon. There's some cool stuff over there. You get to vote on a monthly episode. We've got a horror comedy vote for next month for a $5 patron, so you can go and look at that. If I remember correctly, the options are Cooties, The Final Girls, Cabin in the Woods, and Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Those were the options.
Ooh, all good choices.
Yeah, it's a stack.
Hard to choose one.
Stack choice. So that's over there. And other stuff too. So otherwise though, like, subscribe, because that helps us out too. If you comment below, let us know what you thought of the movie. All that stuff does help us out. But otherwise, yeah, get us on Twitter at mail_fuzz. There is an audio feed for this show now on the podcast apps and stuff. If you want to sort of have that as a backup or recommend it to people who don't watch YouTube videos, maybe you want to listen to it instead. You
need something for your morning commute, or if you're going to the gym or something. Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so it gives us a good rating on iTunes or whatever you're getting your podcast from. But that's everything. I'm finished plugging things. The only thing I'll say now is that because we're doing a lot of extra episodes, there'll be a new one very soon. So you can look forward to that. Thank you very much for watching. Keep watching scary movies, and we'll see you next time.